Well, I have some probably not unexpected news. So the same lunatic that had me forced to cancel the 50th gathering last December is back apparently out of the booby hatch, and I didn't know he has a account at my discussion forum, and he's announced just within the last 10 minutes some new threats for here tonight.
This is the Citizen True Crime Podcast. The Citizen Investigator is breaking the true crime genre. Instead of following the real detectives, this series follows the stories of real, everyday people from all walks of life, who for unique reasons are motivated to solve the most mysterious and captivating criminal cases in the world. Citizen True Crime Podcast is hosted by me, documentary filmmaker and producer Trey Borzoleri. On this episode of Citizen, this is the Zodiac speaking, we follow the Citizen investigators to Presidio Heights in San Francisco, the location of Zodiac's murder of cab driver Paul Stine. Tension escalated when the person making threats at the group arrived at the scene.
Showed up and nobody knows who he is. And he's acting a little sketchy.
Well, Sandy said she's seen that guy.
She just told me she thought that was him.
Oh,
right,
then that's
not good.
not good.
But I think Tommy...
Yeah, you just stay over here.
Okay.
This is exactly to the minute, 50 years after Zodiac killed Paul Stine, his last known victim. And it was where that white van is. That's where Mr. Stine parked his cab. And exactly to the minute, 50 years ago, Zodiac was last seen. Oh, this is the nut. The lunatic threatened to come here tonight and do damage. So he's here. I guess he's not a fan of mine. So I did bring mace. Angie originally got me a pink one, but I said, no, black is more foreboding. I don't think mace works on people like that, though. Can you hear him ranting? He believes his father is the Zodiac, and he believes that we're protecting his father from being prosecuted. And we're protecting him because we're all in a satanic pedophile ring. The Zodiac encountered Paul Stine at the intersection of Mason and Geary, downtown San Francisco, and had Mr. Stine drive to the intersection of Washington and Maple, which was a block further east from where the actual crime occurred. Apparently, Zodiac felt that that location wasn't an appropriate place to kill someone. Maybe there were witnesses, I don't know. So the actual crime occurred right here at the intersection of Washington and Cherry, where that white van is facing us, parked right there. That's where the cab parked for the final time. And there were some witnesses up in that window who did see what happened, and they eventually described the Zodiac to the police, and that's where the famous sketch came from. Zodiac was last seen heading north on Cherry. Never seen again. I think we're going to walk that, I hope. Let's do it. Okay, let's go. Can you guys take the car? Anywhere but here. That's the lunatic. So, God, what do people not understand about the lunatic threatening to kill everybody? Jesus. Oh, but maybe he won't kill everyone. That's true. But what's the worst case scenario? He will kill everyone. Do you really want to gamble with that?
We follow Tom and David Morris on the path Zodiac took to escape. It is suspected that at one point he is confronted by police.
We're going to head north on Cherry and then take a right on Jackson, because that was Zodiac's last known, well, that's where he was last seen, and that was exactly 50 years ago to the minute. And he was last seen headed this way. Did you see a stocky guy with a crew cut go by? With black rim glasses and carrying a piece of shirt? No? Okay, good. Yeah, anyway, the sheriff's department just went by a little late, but Melvin Belli used to live right there. So Zodiac was last seen headed north on Cherry, last seen right about here, I guess, and that's where Melvin Belli used to live, famous attorney. And Zodiac wrote him a letter about 2 months after the last known attack 50 years ago tonight. So ironically, where the Zodiac was last seen headed was in the general direction of Melvin Belli's house, which is, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it happened. Lots of coincidences with this case. So these mansions get remodeled every 5 years, even though they're perfect. So this is where the two officers heading west on Jackson encountered someone who could have been the Zodiac, and they saw him briefly. Zodiac claimed that they had a discussion. The officers denied it, but that encounter, if it happened right in this area. So the cops would have slowed down to talk to him, like right where this car is. Based on where the encounter happened with Falcons Elms, the officers that Zodiac claimed he spoke to, and based on the coordinates that he put in his letter, how many minutes it took him to get to the park and all that stuff, this is where I think he turned north and headed down into the Presidio and escaped. And that's the Zodiac myth and mystery of where did he go?
I was really excited about the prospect of filming at the crime scenes with the citizen investigators during the 50th anniversary of the case. I thought it would be a good way to capture their efforts in honoring the victims and bringing attention to the fact that the case still remained unsolved. In the back of my mind, I did hope that perhaps some type of information would come to light and aid someone in identifying the Zodiac once and for all. The ongoing threat that the group faced was shocking. In the wake of the 50th anniversary, I wasn't sure which path to take next. The Zodiac Killer Case of Northern California is America's most notorious cold case. I grew interested in it as a teenager when I picked up a copy of the book in an airport. What I know all these years later about this case is, well, let me put it this way. One needs permission from oneself to explore and investigate it. And that is because it's the ultimate true crime rabbit hole. It can easily become an all-consuming obsession. I am one of the creators and producers of the History Channel's The Hunt for the Zodiac Killer. When you get greenlit to produce a show about Zodiac, you have unbridled permission to free fall through the rabbit hole. I got to free fall for a good bit of time. Once that production ended, I was still being contacted by people obsessed with the case. Additionally, I was being contacted by viewers with new theories about suspects and the ciphers. This continued for years, but no suspect ever fit perfectly. I was personally getting a glimpse of why this case has gone unsolved for so long. There are many factors for this case becoming the labyrinth of confusion that it is today. Here are some of them. In 1970, California's leading document examiner, Sherwood Morrill, concluded that handwriting evidence starting in the Bates case through the Stein case and all the letters to San Francisco newspapers through 1970 were written by the same person. By 1971, the state of California's Department of Justice considered all the cases Bates through Stein to have been committed by the Zodiac Killer. In 1986, San Francisco Chronicle cartoonist turned author and citizen investigator Robert Graysmith published a popular book on the case that in 2007 became a David Fincher film. Robert Graysmith's theory was that a suspect named Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac Killer. Here's what I know about Arthur Lee Allen. Investigators with both the Vallejo and San Francisco police departments threw everything they could at Allen, investigated all aspects of him, and could not find evidence to connect him. There were many suspicious similarities between Allen and the person investigators were searching for, but nothing came from any of it. However, as the Zodiac case remained cold, Allen never left the minds of a handful of investigators. As time passed, police reports were handed on to new investigators. The old reports garnered continued interest in Allen. With the advent of DNA testing came the comparison of Allen's DNA with the Zodiac case evidence. There was never a confirmed match. I've spoken to some of the retired investigators in this case myself, and they shared that by 2007, the year of the release of Fincher's Zodiac movie, Allen had long been ruled out as a suspect. Armand Palisetti, one of the responding officers to the Paul Stine crime scene, got slack from his colleagues for taking part in the film that identified and promoted Allen as the killer. Here's what I've come to learn about this case. This is a story about a serial killer case like no other, one which grew to become an obsession for many detectives, newspaper reporters, and legions of cryptographers and internet sleuths around the world. The Zodiac case continues to capture our attention for many reasons, but none more important than the fact that it remains unsolved. While we examine the case during this podcast, we will look at the reasons why this case remains unsolved. Here's a snapshot of those reasons. Lack of hard evidence. Without a single confirmed Zodiac evidence specimen, specifically no fingerprints nor DNA, this case cannot be solved like the Golden State Killer case. However, Zodiac submitted numerous writing samples, the letters and cryptograms he mailed to various police departments and newspapers throughout California. Zodiac's writing samples could be matched with writing samples from a viable suspect, but this is a very subjective science. False claims, copycat criminals. Zodiac likely made false claims of responsibility for murders all over the state of California, adding layers of complexity and confusion to the investigation. Victimology. None of the Zodiac's victims knew each other, which gives credence to the idea that his attacks were on random victims. Random victims make it harder for investigators to uncover good suspects. Modus operandi. The killer's motive remains unclear. Zodiac communicated throughout letters and even phone calls. According to him, collecting slaves for my afterlife is the reason for his killing of innocent people. Outbreak of murders, killings, serial killers. During the early 1970s, killers and killings were everywhere in Northern California. Law enforcement agencies were overwhelmed in dealing with a new breed of violence and mayhem. Murders were being described as motiveless, and 30% of them went unsolved. I feel confident in suggesting that in order to understand the Zodiac Killer case, one needs to understand the time and place of which he existed. The counterculture of the 1960s was an anti-establishment cultural phenomenon that developed throughout much of the Western world and was deeply rooted in San Francisco. As the 1960s progressed, widespread social tensions also developed concerning other issues and tended to flow along generational lines regarding human sexuality, civil rights, women's rights, traditional modes of authority, experimentation with psychoactive drugs, and differing interpretations of the American dream. After 1967's Summer of Love, a dark period of violence riddled the Bay Area of Northern California. Experimental and hard drug use continued to rise. It was the dawning of a killing season, the likes of which the region had never seen. Gruesome murders were occurring often, many executed with conviction from revolutionary groups within the counterculture movement, while others were increasingly described as perplexing and motiveless. Dr. William Lamers, a psychiatrist in San Francisco at the time, stated, "The most serious unfavorable reaction to LSD is the development of an acute or permanent psychotic state within the individual." An idea eventually came to me. I realized the path I needed to take. I realized I could actually go back to the beginning. The Zodiac case started on December 20th, 1968, in Benicia, California. The following day, a citizen investigator, perhaps like no other, began an investigation into the unknown killer. Vallejo Times-Herald investigative journalist Dave Peterson. The Jensen Faraday double homicide is the inception of what becomes Peterson's obsession for the rest of his life. He had no idea at the time America's most infamous and mysterious serial killer case lay before him. The case consumed Dave's mind until his death in 2001. 33 years in all, the entirety of Dave's archive had never been fully examined until Dave's nephew, Patrick Collins, granted me access. Dave's files are a beautiful chronology ranging from December 1968 all the way through late 1988. Dave was very thorough. For 20 years, he clipped newspaper articles about local homicides that could have possibly been committed by the Zodiac. Dave conducted audio recordings with the original Zodiac case detectives. From all the jurisdictions, interviews included Jim Husted, John Lynch, Ken Narlow, Les Lundblad, Jack Mullinax, and Dave Toschi. These interviews serve as authentic and valuable windows into the minds of the investigators who knew the most about the case. Dave very much played Z's game by following the hints the killer gave in his letters and ciphers. Dave became very interested in New Age spiritualism. For years, he studied numerology, astrology, and Satanism while attempting to reveal Z's identity. Could Dave's extensive archive be used to reveal the identity of the Zodiac Killer? Let's give it a shot. On the next episode of Citizen True Crime Podcast, this is the Zodiac speaking. We dig into Vallejo Times-Herald police reporter Dave Peterson's one-of-a-kind Zodiac case archive. For Last in Line Pictures, I'm Trey Borzolari, and this is Citizen True Crime Podcast. For additional content from this episode, visit the Last in Line Pictures YouTube channel. Search at Last in Line Pictures.